Good afternoon. One version of the Bible starts out, "Dear friend," but I like the way the King James states this, "Beloved." We are all beloved. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou prosper and be in health, just as your soul prospers. Isn't that wonderful? That's God's word to us through the Apostle John. And Jesus himself said in the second part of John 10:10, I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. And that's what we want for you. That's what he wants for you. And that's what matters the most. So I'm so grateful that each one of you came this afternoon to listen to this presentation on health. It will help us to prosper as we take God's words and abide by them and obey them. We're going to hear a lot of good things. So I'm excited to introduce Dr. George Guthrie. He's a retired family practice physician. I'm going to let him introduce himself a little more after we get started here. But to begin with, we're going to ask Pastor Tony to open us with prayer.
Thank you, Miss Becky. Let's bow our heads. Loving Father, we want to thank you for this beautiful Sabbath. Thank you that everybody's here and that we're recording this wonderful presentation. We ask that your Spirit may fill Dr. Guthrie and speak to each and every one of our hearts, that we could make the decisions and the changes necessary. Be with us. We ask these things and we love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good afternoon. It's good to have you all here, and I'm pleased to be able to share with you a little bit about myself. You see there's a really significant alphabet soup up there behind my name, right? The MD stands for medical doctor. MPH stands for miles per hour, right? No, Masters of Public Health, okay? So that was done at Loma Linda University several years ago. CNS is Certified Nutrition Specialist. So I took the test and passed it. CDCES is the kind of a diabetes educator. I've treated a lot of people with diabetes and jumped through the hoops to be certified there. FAAFP is Fellow of the American Academy of Family Physicians. And FACLM is Fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So I have those two specialties. The family medicine is, of course, the primary one. It's always, as already mentioned, I am recently retired as of October of last year, and was until that time assistant director of the Advent Health Family Medicine residency there in the Orlando area. I'm also associate professor, I think they're still on their books such, for Loma Linda University, but that's just part of the teaching that we were doing. Founding member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, so that's kind of under the belt, and I've been kind of part of that, including president of it for a cycle. They start as, the president-elect, president, and then immediate post-president. So that was 6 years of interesting and exciting opportunity to make a difference in the world. And I have a book called Eat Plants, Feel Whole. Now, I shouldn't claim it myself because it really was Advent Health Publishing that made it happen. They were the team that put it together, and they did a very nice job. So that's a little bit about me. I understand after the presentation, my presentation is over, you're going to see a film called Plant-Wise. So this is a film that I was responsible. For those of you that know anything about grants, getting money to do things, quotes the PI on the film. So That was, you'll see my face on that as well. I think you'll be appreciative of it. I'll say a little more about it when we get to the end. I'm sharing with you a talk that I developed and first gave at the Taiwan meeting of the Asian Society of Lifestyle Medicine. And I've entitled it, Who Will Tell Them? You know, a lot of doctors are unaware that your lifestyle has a powerful effect on diseases, especially chronic diseases, like diabetes, like heart disease, hypertension, obesity, and the surrounding kind of physiology of that, and that many times it can be reversed. So there's enough science now to say that things can be put into remission or reversed, and a lot of doctors are unaware of it. So my message to the doctors was, this is the science. When are you going to start telling your patients? That's one part of the problem. And we have to base what we do on science. We don't want to be telling people, you know, snake oil type things. We want to do what's actually going to work and what is demonstrated. So we have a responsibility to do that. So this is going to have some science in it, not a lot of detailed science, but more science as stories. And it's going to be woven with my own story, because when I graduated from medical school, lifestyle medicine was just getting started. And I've kind of grown up from a medical standpoint. So, you know, 40 plus, almost 45 years ago now, we've seen this story growing. So I hope that this story will touch your hearts, will maybe answer some questions, maybe encourage you to actually make some changes. Now, I said I made this lecture initially for physicians. There's a lot of patients that come in and they've got a disease that their lifestyle could cure or change or improve. And when I recommend such things as a physician, it's common for patients to say, "Doc, just give me a pill." Because they think once your number is down, once your sugar is good, once your blood pressure is good, once your weight comes down, you've solved the problem. It's not true, okay? And so the pills don't do nearly as well as the lifestyle. So we have some evidence of that. Okay? So there's a little background of what we're going to do this afternoon. And I would like to lay some ground rules. I like to answer questions when you have them, and I'll kind of make some breaks. If somebody has a question, make it short, number one. Okay, so that's rule number one, because I'll need to repeat it for the folks online. Number two, no questions about your personal self. If we're going to do a consult, we probably better do that after so the group doesn't have to kind of hang on. Does that make sense to you all? Okay, so short questions about what we're presenting will be appreciated. At the end, we'll open it up for other questions that you may have in other areas. Okay, does that make sense? Let's get started. Abraham Lincoln, famous American president, said this: "You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today." And I'm glad that Abraham Lincoln knew how to make decisions and to get them done. Doctors need to do that. Patients need to do that. You put it off, and it just makes it harder. As Seventh-day Adventists, we have a heritage that goes back into the mid-1800s. And a fellow by the name of John Harvey Kellogg was tagged as a physician, trained, and taken to a, what do they call it? They ended up calling it a sanitarium. It was something about a home where people came and they would have lifestyle interventions. You see, in those days, the medical doctors were using poisons and toxins to try to treat people. They thought there was a problem with humors. So, the 4 basic humors, and if you're having trouble, well, you need to take some, either cause an intestinal purge or take blood out. I mean, this is not really good science, but that's what they were doing. Or they would give a poison of some kind and think that the body would be stimulated then to fight the infection because of the poison. It was kind of crazy thinking. And John Harvey Kellogg had his ear to the ground. He listened to what Ellen White said, and then looked at the science and said, I'm going to do what makes sense with the way God made the body. And his underlying premise was, if you treat the body right, then it will heal itself. So that was quite a dramatic change for the medical community. He was incredibly successful. He was the most famous physician, the most respected physician in the United States. People came from all over. Something to the effect of, it was common for about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 patients who were operated on into their belly, to do something inside the belly. It was very common for about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 to actually die after the surgery. So it was rather risky. Well, John Harvey Kellogg, at the time I read about when the Mayo brothers visited, John Harvey Kellogg had had 103 abdominal surgeries with no deaths. And this was like unheard of because he was following what he had learned and what the Lord was teaching him. Yes, he recognized germ theory. He got everything clean. He was ahead of the scientific community and highly respected. Treat the body right and it will heal itself. There's some theology in this physiology of ours, and I like to call it grace. When you obey the laws of health, healing happens. Healing is grace. And I think there's some wonderful lessons within that. When we obey God's law, healing starts to happen in our body. With time, John Harvey Kellogg's kind of reputation faded. There were some science that came in. You probably heard of penicillin. Here was an antibiotic that would actually make a big difference. You didn't have to do the hydrotherapy, the hot and cold treatments to help the body. So you could just give a pill, and the penicillin or the sulfa, would make a big difference. And from that, the technology has grown to be absolutely amazing. Have you, some of you, anybody had an MRI, right? I know I had a bad hearing problem several years ago. I lost the hearing in my left ear. I went to the ENT specialist, and he put me in the MRI machine, right? So they put me in the machine, and the magnet goes around, clank, clank, and you get a picture of the brain. You can actually see what's going on inside, right? Not everything, but you have a picture of it. Laparoscopic surgery. There's just amazing things that are happening in technology, and we like technology. Technology is extremely important, and we're thankful for medical technology. We're thankful for randomized controlled trials. We're thankful for even medications. The medications we use today, most of them had their roots actually in plants, and they're kind of pulled out and tested. So not all medications are bad. So there have been changes, but as we've seen those changes, the pendulum has swung in such a way that patients and doctors focus on the technology and have lost the basic principle of treat the body right and it will heal itself. God's laws work in the body. I have a sermon which has a punchline that goes something like this. You don't have to keep God's law. You get to keep them. As a matter of fact, you can't break them. If you try to break them, they will break you, right? So they always happen. They're dependable. Okay, so that's kind of the backstory. And those of us here in a Seventh-day Adventist church have a little bit of heritage there, maybe more or less understanding it. My experience in the medical field began with medical school. I graduated from Loma Linda University in 1981 and went from there to Hinsdale Hospital. Have you all, maybe some of you have been there. I spent 3 years there in the family medicine residency and learned a lot. Of course, I'd learned about the drugs and the pathophysiology and microbes. Just all kinds of things that I'd learned about in medical school. Now it was putting it into practice, right? Learning about it. One of my professors was named Donald Bennett. Now, Chicago, of course, is a big city, and to the west of Chicago is this town of Hinsdale. The train runs right through it. Donald Bennett actually worked in downtown Chicago. And he would come out one day a week and volunteer his time at our residency. We all highly respected him because he had a PhD in pharmacology, and he had a medical doctor degree, both. He actually was the PhD first, and then went back to medical school because he wanted to understand how doctors thought. His job was working at the American Medical Association, in charge of a book. He was editor of a book called Drug Evaluations. Drug Evaluations was to take the place of the PDR. Have anybody ever heard of the PDR? Physician's Desk Reference. We used to look medications up in there, right? And each, at the time when he was doing this, each page in the PDR, the drug company was paying $10,000 per page to get their stuff in. So the drug company was making all the information for the doctors, and Dr. Bennett's job with the AMA was to take all that information and then remove it from the drug company and give an objective evaluation. Instead of reading about one drug, you read about a class, which one might be a little better at whatever. So he was highly respected by us as students trying to learn how this business worked. He would do a lecture in pure Socratic style. Haven't ever had any teachers that did so much of this. He would say, Mrs. Jones is 45 years of age, and she comes into your office complaining of some pain in her knees and hips. When she first gets up in the morning, it lasts for about 15, 20 minutes and then goes away, and some ibuprofen, medication might help it. So he would say, what do you want to do for it? And somebody would say ibuprofen, and he would shake his head. And somebody would say, acetaminophen, you all know that's Tylenol, right? He would shake his head. No, and I'm scratching my head and I'm saying, certainly he doesn't want me to use narcotics. That doesn't make sense. But he would say, no, gentlemen, what is the non-drug therapy? Now that was something to hear from a top pharmacologist in the country. What is the non-drug treatment? That should be done first. And every time he gave the lecture, he caught me. But by the end of my residency, I'd learned. Okay, what's a non-drug therapy? And this set me on the road, if you will, to try to figure out as much as I could about the non-drug. It's best to do the basics right before throwing the technology on. Now, sometimes we need technology. If you get in a motor vehicle accident and broke a bunch of bones, you better just lay on the table and let the orthopedist fix you. If you've got an appendix that's inflamed, you probably better let the surgeon take it. Don't argue. Don't go home and try carrot juice. Do you understand? So we need technology, but at the same time, especially for chronic diseases, this whole lifestyle business is really important. What can we do? Not just diet, but exercise, breathing, sleep. It's all of these things together. When we live by the laws that God built our body, we gain the benefits. We begin healing. When I finished at Hinsdale Hospital, I ended up moving to the island of Guam. Now, Guam is out in the middle of the Pacific. You all here are a little more on the East Coast, so you probably don't spend much of your thought over on the left coast. But, further out that direction is the island of Guam. And there was a Seventh-day Adventist clinic there. When I'd gone to medical school, I'd promised that I would do mission service and that I would do primary care. That was the promise I made to the Lord. And when I landed there, I began to try to help my patients understand something about lifestyle change. Now, Guam was a very interesting place. They had about 6-8 times as much diabetes there as they did in the Chicago area or in the United States. It was just much more common. And so I had a lot of opportunity to work with the medications and the insulin that we had to help people with diabetes. And I was always trying to help them get better. Now, I needed to continue to grow too, so I was watching the science. And I saw things like this come across. Jerry Olefsky, University of California, San Diego, was beginning to tear apart what was happening with this thing called insulin resistance. Because the basis of really metabolic syndrome, we'll say more about that, but the basis is you develop insulin resistance and the insulin starts to go up and then problems start to happen. So in medical school, I thought that these were 4 different diseases, right? But they all seem to be tied together by this insulin and insulin resistance. And Jerry Olefsky was demonstrating that you could reverse insulin resistance in fat cells and in muscle cells. And I'm going, wow, really? We can actually get to the bottom of this. People can change. And I thought about it. Now, I didn't have any, quotes, firm evidence, randomized controlled trials, if you will, from the medical standpoint, but I had this basic science. And I would think about it. And it got me to thinking, and it helped me understand a little bit more. The other fellow there on the screen is Gerald Reaven. Gerald Reaven received the Banting Award from the American Diabetes Association in 1988, and he's a hypertensive researcher from Stanford University who figured out that heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, and obesity are actually, did I do one double there? Heart disease? I think we got them. Okay, all four of those are one disease, and they're held together by high insulin levels. And that was like, wow, all of these are one disease. They're all similar. And so patients would come to see me, and I would think about it. I wake up in the middle of the night, lying in bed, thinking about it. Standing in the shower, thinking about it. Is there a way that we could actually reverse this? Well, then into my office one day came this fellow by the name of Ralph, okay? Or at least we'll call him Ralph. This was Guam. A lot of Japanese tourists, Guamanians, local islanders from others of the North Pacific Islands. And so a lot of American military. This man was an Italian, which is kind of interesting, a businessman. He came into my office, and he showed me on his person some yellow raised plaques. Plaque is a flat area. There was no itching to it. There was no redness to it. It was just flat and raised. And it took me about 15 seconds or so to kind of figure it out. I said, I think that's a cholesterol deposit under your skin. And I said, let's do this. Let's get a cholesterol level on you. Have you had one checked recently? No? Anybody tell you had high cholesterol? No. Let's check it, and if it's elevated, then I'll know that's what that cholesterol, that's cholesterol, and I won't have to biopsy it. He said, okay. So I wrote up the sheet for the labs. We used paper in those days. Now it's all computerized, obviously. So I went down through the sheet, and I marked the cholesterol. And I remembered back to medical school. People who had high cholesterol were more likely to have diabetes, and people with high cholesterol more likely to have hypertension, and he had high blood pressure. People with high cholesterol more likely to be obese, and he was obese. So my eyes told me that, as well as the chart. So I said, I'm going to add a blood sugar. So I added a blood sugar to the cholesterol panel, and when he came back the next week, his cholesterol was, total cholesterol was over 300 milligrams per deciliter, way up there. I said, yeah, that's cholesterol deposit. We don't have to biopsy. Then my eyes went down the list, and there was his blood sugar. His blood sugar, fasting, was over 200. Now, in those days, we made the diagnosis of diabetes with a fasting blood sugar over 140 or a random over 200. Here he was. Now we do it at 125, right? But in those days, we did it higher. And he had, his fasting blood sugar was over 200. Now the rules are, I can't make that diagnosis with only one. I have to get at least a second number. So I told him, I said, I can't make the diagnosis of diabetes, but it sure looks like it. And this is what diabetes does. You know, you can have blindness, you can have kidney failure, you can have neuropathy. We don't want these things to happen, so we need to get these blood sugars under control. First thing we do is non-drug therapy. I told him we'll come back to that. The second thing we do is medications, and I told him about the medications that we had. Many fewer in those days than what we have now. Then I told him, in my experience, people with blood sugars as high as yours, the lifestyle isn't enough, the pills aren't enough, you'll probably need to start insulin. At that, this quiet Italian businessman turned into a veritable Vesuvius. Okay? There was a volcano of emotion that came out. Doc, I don't care what happens, I'll never take insulin. And he used his fist and kind of hit the air. And as the volcano is spewing, my brain is going back to what I learned from Jerry Oleski, right? hey, maybe we could actually reverse this. So when he calmed down, I said, I'll tell you what. If you'll do what I tell you to do, as long as your blood sugars are coming down, I won't say anything about pills. I won't say anything about insulin. And I still remember he took that fist again and he said, Doc, I'll do it. I love stubbornness, okay? Stubbornness is important for good healing. It's important for longevity, too. So I never argue with my patients when they are stubborn. I say, good, you're stubborn. Let's work together, okay? Because stubbornness is prerequisite, really, for healing. You've got to change. That was pretty amazing to me to see what happened. We got him a blood sugar machine. The nurse showed him how to use it. I saw him back 2 weeks later. His blood sugar was down, but it was still terribly high. I didn't say anything about pills. I didn't say anything about insulin. So I'm again in another couple of weeks, still coming down. A month, 3 months, 6 months. Finally, I remember that last visit I saw him. That was a year, almost to the day from that very first visit. I said, well, how did it go, Ralph? He said, well, Doc, he said, last week I wanted to see what would happen, so I had some ice cream, and my blood sugar didn't go up. I'd never seen that happen before. Wow. I looked at his chart. He lost 60 pounds. I looked at his blood pressure. It was normal, no pills. His fasting blood sugar was normal. I'd never seen this before. The visit is over, 2 minutes, and I've never seen this before. I couldn't let him go out the door. So I said, Ralph, it's been almost exactly a year since you were here when we started this journey. I said, I asked you to do a whole bunch of stuff. Tell me, how did it go for you? And his brow furrowed. And he said, Doc, there was one problem. I said, what was it? And my brow furrowed too. He said, Doc, this last year, I had 2 custom suits made, and when I got them home, they were both too big. And then he broke out in a big smile. It was my first experience with seeing metabolic syndrome, diabetes, heart disease, all of that stuff reverse. And it changed the whole focus of my medical career. Yes, I could still help people who didn't want to make lifestyle changes, but now I knew the power of lifestyle and something had to be different. It was from there that I decided to go back to Loma Linda and do a Master's of Public Health in Nutrition. That was a very interesting experience. I'm thankful for all that I learned about how our body works from a nutrition standpoint. I also kept my ear to the ground as in the scientific community and kind of watched to see what would happen. One of the milestones in lifestyle medicine occurred when this fella, Dean Ornish, from University of California, San Francisco, published his randomized controlled trial looking at people with heart disease who either refused medical treatment or were told by the cardiologist that nothing could be done. So they joined this program. They had an angiogram. They put the catheter in the groin up into the heart, ran the dye through, and then randomized them to either usual care or Dean Ornish's program. And what he used is 100% plant-based diet, minimally processed, exercise, stress management, and emotional support. They met on a regular basis. A year later, the angiograms were repeated. They took the films, they covered up the names, they sent the films to MD Anderson, I think that's where the radiologists actually read them, and they measured the size of blockage in the arteries of those people. I mean, they didn't know whether it was before or after. The radiologists were just reading the films. And at the end of a year, it was demonstrated that the disease had actually reversed. Now, in medical school, I had some doctors, my teachers, who said, yeah, maybe it can be reversed. And then others said, no, it can't. That's calcified in there. It can't happen. I can tell you now, in my files, I have a study that actually shows the steps and how it happens. So we understand that it's reversible now. So that's good news for those of us that have heart disease, if we're stubborn enough to do the right thing. Well, that was a randomized controlled trial in an ivory tower. Can it happen in the real world? Well, Caldwell Esselstyn, in essence, did exactly that. He heard of Dean Ornish's study, worked at the Caldwell Esselstyn worked at the Cleveland Clinic. He was a breast and thyroid surgeon. That was his specialty. When he retired, he was very interested in this whole cardiovascular disease and actually lifestyle treatment. It started over the breast cancer issue because he looked at the epidemiology and he said, in this country, there's a lot of breast cancer. There's parts of the world where there's almost none. So it must be lifestyle related. So that interest kind of grew in him. And once he finished his, quote, surgery career, he became, interestingly, a preventive cardiologist. I mean, I don't know that he took the boards, but that's what he was doing, right? Actually had people, so usually rather wealthy people, who would come to his home. He and his wife would teach them how to cook plant-based and eat plant-based. Then he would follow up with them on a regular basis. They would come for 3 or 4 days, generally over a weekend. He would train them and then follow up with them. And then following those over time, he was able to demonstrate that those who stuck with the diet actually did not have their heart disease symptoms continue. Now, I've heard him give his lecture multiple times, and he likes to say that they're going through the years, everybody's doing better. There were many, many heart events before they started their diet lifestyle change. And then afterwards, none, except one, he calls him a black sheep, who said, this is too strict for me, I don't want to do that. So he headed off the black sheep path and started to get chest pain again, right? So then he said the black sheep came back, got on the program, and did better after that. Now, Caldwell, as I pointed out to you, had kind of this experience with breast cancer. And this is an editorial which he wrote. I think this was 2014. I think I have that correct. You remember there was a time when a woman got breast cancer and she would get a radical mastectomy? I mean, they'd pull the muscle and everything. So the question was that really all that was necessary? He lived through that business. And we learned that a lumpectomy was as good as a radical mastectomy. It took 10 years for the surgeons to stop doing radical mastectomies after it had been proven. And Caldwell Esselstyn says that was his experience. He watched it happen. He said, I think the same thing is happening in cardiology. It could actually be reversed. And we're still chasing that technology. It could be done with a lot different, a lot of better way. And so I appreciated that editorial. My wife would have liked to have been with me today. She had some other responsibilities. Some of you may know Dina Guthrie from the CHIP program, because she was one of the principals of the Adventist Chip Association. And she told me, she said, McDonald Road Church was one of the big CHIP program runners. Is that right? Anybody been to the CHIP program here? A few. Don't tell me everybody else died off. I certainly hope not. Well, after Guam, I moved back to Loma Linda, did the MPH, taught there for a while, and then moved to Guam. I'm confusing myself. Moved from Loma Linda up to the mountains of California, up near Yosemite National Park. And that's where Dina and I began to run the CHIP program in our community. You see, I had seen one person change their lifestyle, that fellow Ralph, right? Loved his stubbornness. I had worked in the office trying to get people to change their minds, and it was just so few that really wanted to change their behavior. Well, the CHIP program, when we tried to run it at with the local Adventist hospital, they said, what? You want people to come out 4 nights a week for a month? We can't get people out once a week for an hour. And you're talking about 3 hours, 4 days a week. It'll never work. Well, will you advertise for us? Yes, they would put out flyers. Well, the program ended up doing very well. And I discovered the power of a group. When you have a group of people working together on lifestyle, there are some people who will say, maybe I'll try that. Well, then they come back, and the changes happen rather quickly. And when the changes happen quickly, they're willing to tell about it. And the next person says, well, if it worked for them, maybe it'll work for me, right? So it begins to snowball, and it's really exciting to see what happens. Then it's much more efficient than one-on-one in the office. This group process is a great way of actually helping people make changes. I know the little church we moved into, they said, plant-based nutrition, we don't want anything about that. You folks are weird. Well, we ran the CHIP program in the church, and then we had the people who went through the CHIP program come and share their testimony. I mean, they were from the community. They weren't even church members. We had them come to church and tell the church members. Well, next time the program came around, the people in the community said, we want to help. So they began to help with our mission outreach. And the church members who had been so resistant, one at a time, or two at a time, or three at a time, said, maybe we should do this too. So they came through the program. And within a couple, 3 years, everybody in the church was preferring the healthier food. So even our potlucks changed. So the CHIP program was a powerful influence and encouragement to me. Hey, we can make changes in people's lives. I moved from there to Lifestyle Center of America. Anybody heard of Lifestyle Center of America? Okay. It was in Oklahoma, built with oil money, and I was invited from there in California to actually come be one of the doctors there. I spent most of 5 years as the medical director, and that was a whole different environment again. People pay $7,000 or $8,000. They take off 3 weeks. They come for a program. They got to pay for their airfare, and they're ready to make changes. They want get their money's worth. Some of you do that too. So when I told them jump, they said how high on the way up, right? So we had an opportunity to really control the environment, and that was pretty exciting. Now, we were talking about, quotes, reversing diabetes, but the medical community did not yet understand that or had not accepted that. You could get pounded on the chest and said, you're giving people false hope if you said that to kind of the usual doctor. But I'd seen it happen, so I knew that it could happen. And if you've seen it once, you can't say it won't happen. It might not, but it happens. It works. This diabetes prevention program came out in 2002. And when it was published, we were very excited because this was people with prediabetes who are tending to get diabetes. And they gave them either a placebo or a pill, metformin, or another pill, which ended up being taken off the market, and it didn't finish the study because it caused some problems, and then lifestyle, okay? So it wasn't a real aggressive lifestyle. It was, cut back on your red meat, lose some weight, get some exercise. And they found that the lifestyle was more powerful than the medication in preventing the movement towards diabetes. So this was in the medical community and some evidence that the lifestyle changes could be a powerful sort of a thing. So while I was at Lifestyle Center of America, I had an opportunity now to deal with a whole different type of a group. The group in the community, we didn't have control of everything. When they paid a bunch of money and they came, they were more motivated, and you could really see dramatic changes. I think the most dramatic I ever saw, the LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, the most I ever saw was 103 milligrams per deciliter drop in 2 weeks with no medication, which is pretty dramatic. It doesn't happen with everybody, but it did happen. And of course, a lot of different factors. So one of the patients I'm going to give you here as an illustration is, I've called him George here. So George was a 56-year-old CEO of a nonprofit who had diabetes for 20 years, and when he decided to come to Lifestyle Center of America, he called from the intensive care unit. He had just had a heart attack. And he said, with the stent and everything, and he said, I need to do some lifestyle change. Can I come? And my answer when the marketing people came was, no, you have to be out of the hospital a week first. Okay, because we were really not able to, if there was a bad cardiac event, we were not able to handle that. So this is what happened with George. You can see in the before, the after, and the 6 months. Can you see it that when I move the arrow? Probably not. Okay. So the A1C when he came in, what does that say? 8.8, so that's a really high blood sugar, somewhere above 200. Measured his pancreatic output here, triglycerides 139, total cholesterol 148, LDL 83. He's definitely on target post-MI. His vitamin B12 was a little bit low, and I wanted that up a little bit. His blood pressure was under good control with his medications. And there you can see his the medications that he was on. After the program, things were improved more, and he'd actually been able to stop some of his medications. Blood pressure was quite stable. He was down about 15 pounds. Now, he came back 6 months later, so I got the follow-up story on him. You know, I wanted to send him home on a little bit of insulin. He wanted to be off insulin completely because his pancreas, it just wasn't quite there yet. And I said, look, if I send you back to your doctor, he'll say, those people weren't giving you good control for your diabetes. I would really like to have you on at least a little bit of insulin to hold that down. Your pancreas is a little bit on the weak side. He said, Doc, I really want to get off the insulin. I said, okay, it's up to you. I mean, it is the patient's responsibility, right? And the patient's decision. So when he came back, his A1C was 6.4, which is good. It's under the 6.5. We like that. His pancreatic function has actually improved from 80% to 105%. His cholesterol numbers look excellent. Blood pressure is good. And his medication is even down more. So George had really, with time, it doesn't always happen quickly, but with time he was able to reverse it when he stuck with it. Does that make sense? I love stubbornness. And remember, obedience to God's laws brings grace. It brings healing. It's good. Well, that was there while I was at Lifestyle Center of America. I had the opportunity to go in 2004 to Ontario, California. Ontario, California there was a meeting that was called by actually one of the recent graduates from Loma Linda University School of Medicine, and he's probably working on his Master's of Public Health and getting further training at that time. But a student who said, I think we should have a lifestyle medicine professional organization. And so he chose this hotel and called people from all over the country who might be interested. There were probably about 50 of us there, including Caldwell Esselstyn, and anybody know John McDougall, and others. So we were all there together, and we started that organization. I was one of the first, what they called board members. We drew straws, because they were supposed to rotate every 3 years, and I got the short straw, so that was just 1 year, okay? So I can't say I did much. But now that American College of Lifestyle Medicine has actually grown to 13,000 plus members. We had our 20th anniversary celebration last October, yes, in the Orlando area. So these are the pillars of lifestyle medicine. You see here on the left. There's even an international board of lifestyle medicine now. And I had the privilege last month of being present at the first lifestyle medicine conference in the Emirates, there in the Middle East, which is kind of interesting as this whole business is growing, not just in the United States, but around the world. They're trying to make a difference in how people approach. Now, this little picture was taken this last October, and this at the far left you can see Susan Benegas, who's the executive director, and then you see the presidents all lined up from one end to the other. If you look about halfway down, you'll see me sitting next to the fellow with his hands up, okay? So that was a good, an exciting time for us to see the progress of lifestyle medicine. So, questions? You thought you're trying to recognize somebody? Okay, we can come back to that. Okay. So, lifestyle medicine is growing. And after my time there at Lifestyle Center of America, having a hard time keeping the organization going because it cost so much money, and the money was getting slim. Our funding was actually oil money and stocks, and when one goes down, the other usually goes up, and then all of a sudden they both went down at the same time. So they started to cut back. I ended up accepting a job at what they used to call Florida Hospital there in Orlando area, and teaching in lifestyle medicine in the family medicine residency. Well, that's just the kind of thing the doctor ordered, so I have enjoyed doing that for the last 17 and a half years or so. And of course, I had to do lifestyle medicine in the doctor's office. I'm just seeing that I got the slides out of order. Give me just a second. There you go. Okay. This is Lifestyle Center of America. So I need to come back to that one, okay? So this is a Lifestyle Center of America. We followed our patients for 1 year. The behaviorist would call them on a 2, then a 4-week basis, then monthly, then 3 months. And out of a year, we asked them, the behaviorist asked them, a series of questions. One, how much weight do you weigh today on your scales at home? Because we knew how much their weight was when they left the Lifestyle Center of America. And then he asked questions about target behaviors. How many days the last week did you have 100% plant-based eating? How many days the last week did you have no red meat? So that gave us kind of 3 categories, right? How much exercise did you do last week? How much intermittent training did you do last week? So how much sleep did you? So we asked the questions, and then we wanted to know which of those behaviors, which we had been teaching, were actually adopted by the patients. We looked at their weight loss. We took that as our primary measure from when they left the program, because they often lost weight. Most of them would lose weight during the program. So we started with when they left, and then 1 year out. And we lined them up from one end to the other, lowest to highest, and we divided up into quintiles. So they had 5 different groups. We compared the top group with the bottom group and looked to see which behaviors were most likely to explain the weight loss. This was fascinating to us. You can see the average in the lowest group was just a couple of pounds. It wasn't very much, but they still came down. There were only 2 people out of the 172 which actually gained weight, okay, or did not lose weight. So that's encouraging. Those that lost the most weight were out closer to 30 pounds. And the behavior that made the most difference was 100% plant-based diet. How many days in the last week did you have 100% plant-based? That was the one that explained the weight loss better than any others. That justified us, I think, in having our patients move to the plant-based diet. Now, we have other evidence, but it certainly meant it was working for us. Does that make sense? Okay, and I'm sorry I got those slides out of order. Now let's go back to Florida Hospital. So here we are in Florida Hospital. And, that's the hopeful. Maybe I didn't have them so far out of order. Okay, onward. We're going to get to Florida Hospital a little bit here. So I kept going to medical meetings. This was the American Diabetes Association Banting Award in 2005. This fella, Michael Brownlee, is a diabetic himself, type 1 diabetic, and he became a diabetes researcher, which is pretty neat. And he discovered, we used to argue about what causes the diabetes diseases, the kidney failure, the eye problems, the neuropathy, the decreased circulation, the amputations. And there were like 4 different theories as far as which did it, okay? Or maybe all of them. So each one had its own researcher, and they kind of pushed that. Well, Michael Brownlee put them all together. He said, you put sugar into for those of you that understand this, for the rest of you, I apologize. You put sugar into the Krebs cycle, and it goes so fast that it drops out a bunch of reactive oxygen species. You may know those as free radicals, okay? And that tends to slow down the process so the sugar won't come into the cell. It creates an internal insulin resistance just because of the buildup of sugar inside the cell, especially in the endothelium, which cannot make insulin resistance. When that happens, all four of those things happen. So all four of those were tied together by this one research. Wow, we're getting more insight into how it all works. It's pretty exciting. A few years later, or maybe earlier, Ralph DeFranzo from San Antonio, Texas, is a big researcher in this whole area of metabolic syndrome, explaining the different things that happen. It's much more than those four diseases that we learned about earlier. This includes problems with the pancreas beta cells that make insulin, muscle insulin resistance, liver insulin resistance, fat tissue resistance. Then there's this whole incretins. Now maybe you all have heard of this GLP medication to help people's diet. Well, that whole part of this was something that was brought out here by Ralph DeFranzo. And then glucagon ends up going up. That's another part of the pancreas, and that makes the sugar go up. Then kidney absorbs more glucose when you get diabetes rather than less. And then there's the whole appetite dysregulation in the brain. So Ralph DeFranzo kind of helped expand that for all of those of us physicians who help to take care of people with diabetes. I was really excited when I saw Roy Taylor's lecture or read it. He got the Banting Award in 2012. He actually, this was in the United Kingdom, Newcastle University, kind of up on the northeast coast of England, just below Scotland. And he took a group of people, put them on very low-calorie diet, about 400 calories a day, and measured their the fat in their liver, the fat in their pancreas, a whole bunch of the measures that we've been looking at for diabetes and heart disease, and was able, in about 8 weeks of time, to demonstrate reversing of diabetes. This is the first time it's in the literature. He said this is reversing diabetes, and the American Diabetes Association gave him the Banting Award for discovering that. That was 2012. It's 2025 now. Are your doctors telling you about this now? I hope so. I hope so, because the science has been out. Now, it is true that the American Diabetes Association said we don't like the word reversal. We want to use the word remission. If you have cancer, you get treated and you hope that the cancer goes away, but we don't say you're cured because that cancer cell could come back, right? So we use the word remission. Well, the same is true, especially of type 2 diabetes. Since diabetes is a relation, it's a lifestyle-related disease. If you go back to your old lifestyle, it's going to come back again. So let's call it remission. Now, I will tell you that the American College of Lifestyle Medicine has made a statement. Reversal is fixed, as happens, when you fixed all of the pieces inside. Okay, all of those things that Ralph DeFranzo talked about, when you get all those right, then we can say that the disease is reversed. But that takes a lot more work and a lot more time to actually happen. Any questions? Have I blown you away? I haven't seen many hands raised. Wow, the basic program to give a diabetes person. I'll give you the one that I gave to Ralph, which I didn't have scientific evidence for at that time, but I do have it now, okay? So my lecture to the patient when I have them in the office goes something like this. Do you like apples? How many apples can you eat before you're full? For me, probably 3, and that's about it, right? If you smash those apples up and take the apple juice out, put it at the end of your knife, and you take it with the meal, you have 7 to 8 apples worth of energy, calories, glucose. Now, is apple juice bad? No, but apples are better, right? You could turn it into apple pie, too, and that would be even worse, right? Okay. I said, sir, do you eat corn? Yeah, I eat corn. How many ears of corn do you eat at a meal? My record when I was a teenager was 13 ears of corn. It was a corn roast at the beach, okay? Corn is good food. If you smash that corn up and take the oil out, put it in a bottle, you write no cholesterol on it because Plants don't make cholesterol. It only comes from animals. So you write no cholesterol on it. I take it from the store. I take it home. I make a salad dressing out of it. I take a tablespoon of it, and I make a salad dressing, and I pour it on my salad. I have 16 to 18 ears worth of corn oil. Now, is corn oil bad? No, it's probably good, a good oil, as long as you don't get too much of it, right? But corn is better. So he seemed to be catching on, so then I went for my next one. Sir, do you eat grass? And, everybody, they look at me, what? No. I says, the cow eats grass. Takes all the fiber out and concentrates, watch it, I love puns, concentrates those calories. So, if you're going to have animal products, because they're so concentrated in calories, use it as a condiment rather than the meal. So better to have a little ground beef with your beans than to have the steak. That would be a mistake. So I warned you there's humor here, okay? So we try to move people from animal-based eating to plant-based eating. Then, because of what I had been thinking and learning from Jerry Oleski about reversal, I told him, look, I don't want you to have any supper at night. Our goal is to have your stomach completely empty in the morning. So I want you to exercise before you eat breakfast in the morning. I'm not going to tell you how long. I'm not going to tell you how far. I just want you to do something before you eat breakfast. Okay? Because that's what I was learning from Jerry. It was too many calories in, insulin resistance, and so the muscle will get insulin resistant, and the fat too, for that matter. So it made sense to me from a logical standpoint, we now know it's true, that if you can exercise on an empty stomach, you'll really reverse the insulin resistance faster. When I saw the guy back 1 week later or 2 weeks later, I said, how did it go? He said, Doc, the first morning, is his word, I waddled 50 feet from my front door. But by the time he was seeing me, he had already stretched it to a quarter mile. And he grew that with time. So that exercise under a fasting state was a pretty powerful one, I think. And we certainly understand that now. The evidence is that intermittent fasting, have you heard of this now? Because that's the fancy name for it. Intermittent fasting actually does reversal of the fatty liver and the liver insulin resistance. When your liver has insulin resistance, it pours glucose out. My patients with diabetes who say, Doc, I didn't eat anything and my blood sugar went up. The reason is because their liver is insulin resistant. So they're not eating anything, but their liver continues to pour this glucose out. It's a real challenge to get it turned around, but it can be done in most people. Yes, ma'am. So the question is it possible to get high cholesterol, to have high cholesterol even on 100% plant-based? Now we're getting into some technical stuff here, and it's important. So I'll go ahead and touch on it. Your cholesterol number is a poor gauge of your risk of heart disease when taken by itself. The studies that were started out in Framingham, Massachusetts look at populations. And you can see when you move the population to the plant-based, there's an improvement, but there are still people with low cholesterol who will have heart attacks, and there are people with high cholesterol who will never have a heart attack. So the cholesterol numbers are not disease, they're markers. They're risk factors. So yes, that happens. I happen to be one of the people who tends to have a higher cholesterol, and what I've done is about every 10 years I get my carotids intimal thickness checked so I can see if that cholesterol is really causing a problem. There's no such thing in the body as single vessel disease. If it's in one artery, it's going to be in all of them. So this is used as a surrogate by drug companies to see if their medications are working. So I'm using it to look at my own body to see how that's working. So consider lifestyle is much more powerful in dealing with disease than your numbers. Okay? Remember, anybody heard the name Tim Restert? He was a sports newscaster in New York. went to his cardiologist, had high cholesterol, was put on cholesterol medicine, got it down right where the cardiologist wanted it. He had a treadmill test, passed it with no problem. 1 month later to the day, he was in his office, dropped dead of a heart attack. Those perfect numbers do not protect you. When you have an angioplasty done, when someone has, like 50% of those are plugged up in 3 to 6 months, okay? They're really not solving the problem. You have to change the lifestyle to really make a big difference. Yes, medications can make a difference. There are some people who absolutely have to have them, those with genetic changes, etc. And there are some people, especially those who have a heart attack, that probably should take it, right? Because it does, that's a whole another lecture. But yes, plant-based does not necessarily lower your cholesterol to where you want it, but it will lower it, okay? And most people. Yes, ma'am. Oh, well, the lecture on dementia is another one, okay? And there is some reversibility there, but I'm not sure that it's actually the cholesterol issue. I do have some studies that look at cholesterol lowering levels and mortality, and it looks like once we get older, if we force it too much down, we can actually maybe have more death. So there's clues. It isn't all, we don't know for sure. There is some evidence that the cholesterol-lowering medications, what we call the statins, does decrease, it decreases inflammation and does decrease the risk of dementia a bit. So that evidence is out there too.
Let me maybe rephrase that. There are some that say you have our cholesterol too low now because you haven't had an incident of dementia, and that that's related to
I don't think so at this point. I don't think so at this point. It's the evidence of cholesterol being too low and increasing risk of death, for example, it's more related, because it's population data, it's hard to ascribe cause and effect. They may be associated, but there's probably something else doing it. So that's the best I can give you on that one, okay? Oh, there's another one over there, and then I'm going to come back and show you some more stories. I think he's turning it back on.
Okay.
I'll repeat it if necessary.
It's on. Okay. Oh, there it comes. I have read that with diabetes that exercising right after a meal for 10 to 15 minutes after a meal absorbs or uses some of the glucose that's released after a meal, and you're talking about exercising before a meal. So can you clarify that for me?
Before or after the meal? That's always a big question, isn't it? Yeah. So trying to reverse insulin resistance in the liver, you do that better when you're actually in the fasting state. That's when it's going to be more effective. If you're talking about lowering blood sugars, then exercise is very helpful because exercise allows the muscle to put sugar into the cells without insulin. So it's beneficial. So if, for example, if I'm helping a patient get better and they're making some changes and maybe I've got them, we're checking their blood sugars. So I say check your blood sugar 2 hours after you eat. If it's over 140, you either have to eat less, take more insulin, or exercise. But not heavy exercise, moderate exercise, just to get the muscles moving. Most of the muscles are between your knees and the bottom of your rib cage. So just walking, in essence, does a lot to kind of help that. It doesn't have to be a vigorous exercise. That would interfere with the digestive process, and I would suggest moderate exercise. Good question. Okay, let's try another story or two as we go on. So this was back, now I finally made it to Florida Hospital. And what we decided to do was to use a program in the office, right? Because we knew in an ivory tower, we could actually reverse diabetes and heart disease for that matter. We knew that using groups was beneficial in improving blood sugars and cholesterol, this whole kind of process. One-on-one, not quite as efficient, so could we use group actually in a medical practice? And so, in essence, that's what we did. We used a video program that we had developed at Lifestyle Center of America and ran it for like 16, 18 weeks. I started out doing it twice a week, and then we switched to once a week. And patients would come. It was a little difficult getting doctors around us to refer to us at first, but that improved. So this is a fellow who we're going to call Keith, who had come. He was actually the spouse of one of the employees of the large hospital system. And he worked more in the construction business, flooring and those types of things. And he came in and started listening, and he was kind of resistant, that stubbornness stuff that's so helpful. He had some of it. And he simply said more than once, "I will never give up meat." I said, "That's okay, just work on eating a few more vegetables, right? Eat your plants, use your beans." So he began to make those changes, and over a period of time here, he came regularly. It was about a year and a half, if I remember correctly. So you can see May 2 in 2016 to January 19, 2017. Here are his numbers. He kept coming after this, but this is his numbers. His A1C dropped from 8.5 to 5.4. His weight dropped from 134.7 kilos down to 110. I know you all think in pounds, don't you? Well, that's a lot, okay? So good weight loss. LDL went from 88 to 81. His blood pressure stayed about the same, and please notice that he stopped a whole bunch of medications. So he was very pleased with that. Somebody who was resistant in a group process, working together with a doctor, adjusting medications and other things, we were able to actually demonstrate this for him and see him effectively getting better. One of the problems we had, as I mentioned, was the physicians, because physicians are a little bit slow in making changes, as Dr. Esselstein complained, comparing it with the breast lumpectomy. Well, Jose, one of the hospital employees, had some of the most dramatic changes of anybody. He made the changes. He was relatively new with the diagnosis of diabetes. The earlier you have the diagnosis and do something about it, the better it is, or the easier it is. So he really embraced it. He and his wife kind of came together, and this is what happened. His A1C in March of 2016 was 13.8. It dropped to 5.8 by July. That's pretty dramatic, isn't it? Weight dropped down, about 30 pounds or so. LDL cholesterol stayed about the same. He had decided to stop his cholesterol medicine, and he's still, doing well, acceptably. Blood pressure, excellent as well, and what's more, his neuropathy had disappeared. I was taught that neuropathy is not reversible. Once you got neuropathy with your diabetes, that's it, you're stuck with it. Well, I've seen it reversed many times now, so I know that that is not necessarily the case. So what we did was we had Jose come into our practice, where we had all those young doctors, and we had him tell them his story. Okay, this is what I did, and this is what my numbers look like. And then the doctors started referring. So how do you get to doctors? Well, you demonstrate to them. And I've seen that happen before. I guess I have time to tell this story. When I was in the mountains of California, working out of Sonora Community Hospital, we ran that CHIP program. And one of the cardiologist's patients came to our CHIP program. She lived up on the hill where we did. We were about almost 50 minutes away, 50, from the hospital. Well, she had such good improvement, she told the cardiologist, and the cardiologist said, "Wow, this is good." He got interested in it, adopted the CHIP program himself, and started getting his patients on it. That is, he helped to get the program started. So that was neat, especially since I'd known that cardiologist when I was at Loma Linda as a medical student. He was a cardiology resident. And in those days, we just discovered that olive oil was good for heart disease prevention. Y'all remember hearing of that? So we just discovered it, and the cardiology residents were running around the hospital with little flasks of olive oil in their pockets, and they'd take it out and take a swig now and then to kind of get the benefits. Well, it kind of ended up showing, right? So, yeah, those changes were made, and doctors will change as they see it happening, although it's really hard for a doctor to tell a patient to do the right thing if they're not doing it themselves, okay? So how do you deal with skeptical physicians? I think tell them stories or have them experience it for themselves. Now, I had another opportunity also because the project I was doing was funded by Florida Hospital. Actually, Florida Hospital at that time had self-insured health insurance. So they were paying the medical bills on all the employees. And because it was the head of the medical director of their insurance company that funded us, we were able to get access. So we watched these patients for a year. We took care of them for a year, and we were able to see their numbers. So the A1C dropped 11%, which was positive. The BMI, 7.8%. The LDL came down about 17.6% on that group of patients that we had that were actually under the employee insurance. And because it was the insurance company, I'm not allowed to publish this, but it dropped their per member per month cost by about 50%. So I took that information to talk to executives to say we need to start doing something about this. So money talks, that's helpful. Okay, let's keep going. Lessons learned. Change is slow until the tipping point. And I think we're getting close on lifestyle medicine from a national standpoint. As with Ralph, physicians have a responsibility to recognize, create, if possible, and use windows of opportunity. When someone's ready to make a change, jump on it. And people with diabetes tend to have more crises than others. A crisis tends to bring about a willingness to change. I've learned from teaching patients that those who understand why they're doing something are much more likely to do it than if they're just told to do it. Does that make sense? So I like to explain the diabetes, explain the physiology of the cholesterol, etc., to people to help them understand. No pill works like lifestyle change. No pill works like lifestyle change. I hope you've got that story. There is power in story. Tell stories. I like to say facts don't change behavior. Stories change behavior. Because when I hear somebody's story, I am much more likely to say, maybe I can do that. As a matter of fact, my office practice changed. When someone comes in with brand new diabetes or heart disease or hypertension, the story is not, well, you got this problem and this is going to happen if you don't, and you got to take this pill, or here's the lifestyle that you have to do. I don't do that. I tell a story of somebody who reversed the disease. And then I say, now if you were interested in trying to do this, and I give a Xerox copy of a cover of a book, for example, Caldwell Esselstyn's Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. And I say, if you're interested in doing this, go get this book off Amazon, read it, and I'll help you. That way, I'm not trying to download all the information. Somebody else can do that. Does that make sense to you? There's power in story. Your own story, one of your friends or colleagues' story, all of these stories are powerful. They need to be told. Story creates and nourishes hope. Hope is necessary for success, and success breeds more success. And last but not least, money talks, right? So if we're going to change the culture, the money is going to have to be involved in this as well. Interesting journey this has been. This is a reference to a particular article that is very exciting to me because it's the first time I'd seen it. Ben van Omen is from the Netherlands, and this article was published in 2017, so maybe 8 years ago. And what he did was he identified the 6 biological systems. You see, I put them down here. The beta cell, those are the ones that make the insulin. Muscle insulin resistance, liver insulin resistance, fat tissue insulin resistance, the blood vessels, and then chronic low-grade inflammation. So he identified these as the major things that needed to be addressed. Then he reviewed all the literature, and he looked at medical, physiologic, he looked at social, he looked at government, he looked at policy, just a big picture, reviewed all the literature on it, and published it about reversal for all these chronic diseases. And he makes the argument that it's possible, he and his team. That for those of you who want to, you can get on PubMed to find Ben Van Omen's article, and it's one of those free ones that you don't have to pay for, so you can just download it as a PDF. So here's the illustration from his article. Okay, so there are the different kind of areas: insulin resistance, cholesterol levels, blood pressure, systemic inflammation, oxidative stress, and then the fat load. Now, if you look at it again, now you can see the liver up there on the left. You can see the pancreas there on the right. You can see fat tissue coming out in yellow. You can see the gut coming out in purple. You can see the blood vessels coming out in yellow. You can see the muscle coming out there in, what would you call it, pink. And last but not least, the kidneys only got a couple of those kind of in purple. So those are all the things that are going on in your system when you have this disease process going on. Now they're all related. So there's all the positive relations. And then you can add on top of that the negative relations. Can you see that it is impossible for a drug to really manage this disease? The best you can do is really change the lifestyle. You have to deal with the problem underneath, or it's going to continue to get you. Okay. And then I'll end with this one. Douglas MacArthur, some of you may be old enough to remember him. My father, as a boy, was a prisoner of war of the Japanese in the Philippines, and Douglas MacArthur rescued him. Well, 101st Airborne came and saved him. I like General Douglas MacArthur, although he had quite an ego. He said this: "Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul." Don't quit. Don't wrinkle your soul. Grab the information, do something with it. Okay? That's the end of my talk. Okay, open mic for questions. I think we've got a few minutes for that. I will, yeah.
I have a question about nutrition. There's
Yes,
so
sir.
much confusion. Do you think it's safe to follow Ellen G. White's advice about nutrition? And
Right.
also a follow-up about her advice about fruits. If you can touch about not mixing and eating after a full meal.
Okay, the question is, it sounds like it's a couple different parts. I have found what Ellen White has written to be correct from the scientific standpoint. So I have, because of my interest in nutrition, tried to find articles that support. There are some things that I have not been able to find support for, but I still acknowledge them as being correct. I had the privilege while I was at Loma Linda University of taking a class in food science from one of the undergraduate professors who was a food scientist, the PhD in how food works and all of that stuff. And he was also a believer in the divine inspiration of Ellen White. And so he would take the science and kind of show us how it fit together, but there were some areas that we really didn't have enough to be able to say so. So yes, I take it as correct. You asked about mixing fruits and vegetables. Having read the books and looked for the question why, as I've told you, when we understand, it's a lot easier to do. And I know God wants us to understand, and so often I've found that if you read a little further besides just don't do that, you'll find out why. And Ellen White states when she talks about this, at least in one of the places, if you eat the fruits and vegetables together, it tends to make you sleepy. But if you're outdoors working, it's not going to be a problem. It's much more an issue if you're actually sitting behind a desk. And indeed, as she recommended, experiment on yourself. And I found that for myself, when I do that, I got sleepy in the afternoon if I did that at lunch, right? So it holds out true for me. So I hope that helps. Interestingly, the historians tell us that, many people in the United States think of tomato, cucumber, eggplant as vegetables, right? Technically, they're fruit. But the fact that they're identified as vegetables, the historians tell us, actually come from Battle Creek. We identify a fruit and a vegetable generally by what Dr. Kellogg taught. Other things that Kellogg taught, for example, breakfast, having a good breakfast, and you're acquainted with that, of course, because of the Kellogg's cereals, but also exercise with music was something that John Harvey Kellogg started. What do you call it, jazzercise now, whatever it is, but that's one of those things that was done in those days. So let's see, there was another one that I skipped my brain. So yes, I think we've got a lot to continue to learn. I've been a physician and nutritionist long enough to know that there's a lot of individual variation, and I cannot lay down the rule for everybody, right? So I don't look in people's grocery carts. I don't look at your plate in potluck or which line you get into. That's not what it's about, okay? And another interesting concept that may be helpful here is the whole concept of therapeutic versus maintenance. So a healthy diet may be fine for people and have, a little bit of some of the things that are sometimes considered foreboding. Oil, nuts, those types of things. But if you're actually trying to have a therapeutic diet where you're trying to reverse something, that may need to be a little more strict for a while. It doesn't have to be that way forever, but when you're going through that change, it may be necessary to do a little more. So we try to depend on the science and what we know from the Spirit of Prophecy to help guide us in that. I hope that was helpful. Yes?
Thank you for sharing your time with us and a great deal of knowledge. I have a question about Alzheimer's. It's been talked about as another type of diabetes. What would you have to say about that?
Okay. We now have diabetes type 3, 4, and 5, okay? And you probably don't want to know about those. But a group of neuro researchers discovered that the changes happening in the brain with when you kind of have diabetes of the brain. Let me see if I can say this correctly. I was taught in medical school that the brain does not need insulin in order to take the glucose into it. What they discovered was, because people with type 1 diabetes, their brain still works, right? The sugar still goes in. What they discovered was that the brain makes its own insulin, so it's not dependent on the pancreas. And so those researchers said, we're going to call that type 3 diabetes. Now that, I don't know that has caught on all the way around. What I would ask you to do would be to talk to your health ministries leader and ask for her to invite me back to do the lecture on dementia. Because there's some good evidence now that dementia is actually reversible in many cases. But it's not all the diabetes. That seems to be just a small part of it. So I don't have an opportunity or time here to really get into the depths of it. Okay? Okay, another one.
What lifestyle changes would you recommend to someone with pre-diabetes?
Which lifestyle measures, is that the word you said?
Or changes, like what would you recommend? Yeah. Okay,
I wasn't sure I understood. Well, that which reverses diabetes also reverses pre-diabetes. I told you when I went to school, the diagnosis of diabetes with the blood sugar over 145. They lowered it to 125. That's cheating, changing the rules mid-game. What they recognized was that it's actually a process, and it starts years before. As a matter of fact, we know that the risk of a heart attack for males starts to go up when their fasting blood sugar is over 90. For women, it's over 100. So it's a process, and the sooner we can intervene, the better. Now, the message that I shared with you about what I told Ralph, better to take apples than apple juice, better to take corn than corn oil, and use animal products as condiments, better to use ground beef with your beans than to eat the steak, right? So those are very good things to do. Now we know, additionally, as I mentioned earlier, that intermittent fasting is one of the best things you can do to reverse the liver insulin resistance, which is really the chief cornerstone of the diabetes problem. Interestingly, people who do the what we used to call an Atkins diet, now what do they call it? Keto. They demonstrate cholesterol comes down, sugar comes down, their weight comes down, but their fatty liver goes up. And that's the basic problem, driving factor underneath. So it also resets so their weight goes back up. You don't want to go that direction. Okay.
Yeah, so thank you for coming up, and I know you brought warm weather with you, so thank you for that, especially if you're coming up from Florida, like I'm guessing, which may be another question. But I was curious, you talked about diabetes being reversible. Does type 1 diabetes, is that reversible as well?
Type 1 diabetes is a different problem. Type 2 diabetes, you don't catch diabetes, you earn it, okay? I mean, it's a lifestyle thing that brings it on most of the time if it's diagnosed correctly. Many are improperly diagnosed. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease, and that's something we're still learning about. I have seen in the literature, for example, a child in the range of 8 or 10 years of age who was given high doses of vitamin D, and if I remember correctly, vitamin E. May have been something else. I've got the article in here. Given high doses of that, a year later, still had pancreatic function. It hadn't gone away. So there may be a way to get there. I've heard about transplant at the American Diabetes Association, transplant issues and challenges and problems. So we may be getting to that, but at this point, we don't. Type 1 diabetes is not reversible. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, I'm going to take one more here, and then I should probably do a little introduction to the film. He wants some examples of intermittent fasting. Okay. It takes 8 to 12 hours to reach the fasting state after you have your meal. The last meal, if it's large, will take longer. The more fat in the meal, the more slowly it digests. The stomach empties at about 10 grams of fat per hour. So you're trying to get so there's no more calories coming from food, and the calories are then coming from the liver. It's a fasting state. Insulin levels go low, the liver starts to make the glucose. Now you're not taking it in, so that's the fasting state. It's in that fasting state where you're exercising the liver. You can't take the liver out to make it do push-ups. All you can do is fast it. And intermittent fasting, there's a variety of ways of doing it. You can not eat or eat a very small number of calories one day a week, and that's considered one type of intermittent fasting. The type that I have adopted into my own life is no supper. The studies have been done looking at skipping 2 meals a day. Intermittent fasting is like 6 hours with food and 18 hours with none. Okay, so that's kind of how it's divided up. And they've done it to look at skipping breakfast versus skipping supper. And skipping supper is much better at lowering the fat in the liver, and it takes care of the problem faster. Doing it in the morning, skipping the morning, is not as effective, and I found that true in patients as well. If you eat a large meal at night when you go to bed, what's your body going to do but store it, right? So it's better to sleep in the fasting state. Besides that, being in the fasting state, your gut makes a whole bunch of something we call melatonin. You sleep better, okay? So, it just makes a lot more sense to skip that evening meal. A little bit of a challenge at first to learn how to do that. That's the intermittent fasting. There is another one called fasting mimicking diet, done by Dr. Longo at UC Davis. They've got a kind of company that kind of helps with this. And what they do is there's no animal products in it at all. No animal protein, because animal protein wrecks the fasting state. It stimulates insulin. I know a lot of people tell you otherwise, but sorry, it's true. So only plant proteins, plant fats, and it's, if I remember correctly, about 400 to 600 calories a day for 5 days, and that is done once a month for like 5 or 6 months. And Dr. Longo has been able to demonstrate, first in mice, and then similar markers in human beings, although we don't cut human beings open like we do mice. More muscle cells, more brain cells. That is, the body is restoring itself, and it happens during the fast. Your body goes into like a coiled up spring, and when you eat, it all of a sudden opens up. And have you heard of stem cells? The stem cells are just all over the place. So you can actually get like a stem cell, bit of a storm, I guess we could call it. And so the body does a lot of regenerating that way. And that can be very helpful for people with pancreases who are, for example, burnt out and destroyed. They may be benefited by that fasting mimicking diet. That's probably as much as I should say about it. Okay, film. I'd like you to see this film. This is a project. I mentioned that we were able to get a kind of some grants from a couple places to help pay for it. You'll see it on the film. Here was my idea. When I worked at Lifestyle Center of America, people would come after the marketing team had talked them into it, right? Well, when I was in an office, it's hard to find people who are really willing to change. So I says to myself, wait a minute, where are people most likely to be ready to change? You remember, somebody told me, maybe I've got the wrong person here. Jesse James was asked at one point, why do you rob banks? And he said, because that's where the money is. Okay, so if I want to help sick people, maybe the best place to work is actually where the sick people are. So could we introduce lifestyle changes to patients within the hospital when they're having their crisis? Does that make sense? Made a lot of sense to me. So this was my dream, and after fighting for it for a number of years, it's a long story, we finally got permission to actually make that happen. It was quite a journey. We had to get an order for anybody admitted with diabetes. You know, the doctors use these standing orders, so they push the button on the computer and all the orders come in. They can uncheck any of them that they want, but the standard orders make everything go faster. So we had to go to the endocrinology department, we had to go to internal medicine, and then to the medical staff, get it approved, and then to nursing, because it had to go through that part of things. And legal, oh my, legal was absolutely a big challenge, but we finally got it. So we could, when someone came into the hospital and they had the diagnosis of diabetes, the doctor ordered the set, the nurse automatically had a card which they took to the patient that had a little QR code on it, so they could look on it on their phone or their pad or go to URL to the computer and look at this film. You see, it's expensive to have people, to pay somebody. It's hard to control the message. To have a bunch of people trying to give a message to patients. So we said it'd be better if it was a film. And that was inexpensive because people are expensive. So we ended up making the film, got it ready to go, and got the feedback. We had programs to follow up, including we had 4 people who could actually do plant-based diabetes management for these people. So it was aimed at people with diabetes. Finally got it ready to go. Turned the button to make it go. We started getting the data in, and 2 weeks later, COVID hit. So that was a big disappointment, because people were more worried about getting out alive rather than actually reversing their diabetes. So that's the story behind the film. And what it is stories of people who have actually made lifestyle changes. I think you will enjoy it. It's free. All you have to do is go on the web, look it up, share it with a friend, and point them in the right direction. Okay? So I will add one more thing before we'll let you come up. I have some books, okay? One of them is called, the brand is Eat Plants, Feel Whole, okay? There's a journal which goes along with it. which helps people. You're looking for positive points. You know, did you do this? Did you do that? You get points. You try to increase your points each day. That can be helpful. There's the Eat Plants, Feel Whole cookbook. I know the bookstore here at ABC just purchased 5 of them for me wholesale, and they'd be happy to sell them to you, I'm sure. So I don't have any for sale here, obviously, but wanted to let you know those were available thanks to the Advent Health Publishing. So please.
All right, thank you, Dr. Guthrie. If I could have the slide with the information on it just for a moment. I will tell you, I started reading the book. I'm about a third way through. It's very easy reading, a lot of good information, so I recommend it. What you're going to see on this slide is contact information. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, email Health Ministries here at the church, and that will be shown. Also, the church's phone number. And also want to let you know that this coming Thursday evening at 6:30, we will have a follow-up to this. If you would like to come, it will be more of a group session. We'll try to give you personal care, do assessments on paper. Paper assessments of your health status, maybe what you want to do in your health journey. We want to support you in your health journey. And when I say we, it is me and Pastor Tony that will be there to give you resources, some education, what we can offer. And so we'd like to have you come, or you can share that information with others, and we'll just go from there, trying to give you the best individual support that we can. All right. Do we have the information slide? Okay. We'll show it at the end, and you can see it then. All right, we'll go ahead with the movie.
In the wee hours of the morning, I heard my mom cry out. And we raced up to their bedroom, and he was gone. He was 58 years old, and he was gone.
They said we can give you medicine to slow down, but eventually you're going to lose your vision, and the nerve damages, it's going to lead to amputation.
How many people have had their loved ones die from preventable diseases?
Heart attack is the #1 killer of Australian women.
Nearly half the U.S. adult population meet the new criteria with high blood pressure.
Mexican obesity rates are now higher than in the United States.
1/3 of Americans who have strokes are under age 65, sometimes much younger.
Around 4 million people in the UK have type 2 diabetes.
If you just see one patient with a heart attack, and then another patient with high blood pressure, and another patient with diabetes, at some point you got to just back up and say, what is causing all of this?
We think the best thing for you to do is to have an amputation.
We're taught to treat diseases after they occur. We're not taught how to prevent them in the first place.
There's this basic lack of training for doctors when it comes to nutrition, but that's changing.
In our studies over the last almost 40 years now, we found there's a common treatment for so many of these different conditions.
I'd never imagined this much of a dramatic change in a year, and I never imagined feeling this good, this quick. I want to feel better. It is about the weight. I'd love to get the weight off. I know that I need to get it off for my joints, but I'm 36 years old. I just want to be healthy. I want to enjoy my kids, enjoy my grandkids. I cannot imagine missing one thing.
My family has been devastated by chronic disease. My mother was diabetic for 33 years. She did have a kidney transplant. She was legally blind. She had many, many years of dialysis, many, many years of shots, injections, and pills, and ultimately passed away at the young age of 61 years old. My oldest sister also battled diabetes. My oldest brother, David, unfortunately at the young age of 40, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He passed in 2002, actually just 2 months after my mother passed away. My twin brother Joe, we're 47 right now, going on 48. He's been diabetic over a decade, and just about 4 months ago, he advised us he had a heart attack. My little sister, she's been diabetic many, many years, over a decade as well. And then the youngest brother is Martin. He is 43 years old. He was diagnosed with diabetes at a young age, in his early teens, 13 or 14 years old. So he's had diabetes for approximately 30 years now. He has had his right leg amputated. He's had a kidney and pancreas transplant. He's legally blind. He does dialysis 3 times a week, and he takes 25 medications every single day. And everything that I was ever taught, everything that I was ever led to believe, everything I'd ever read basically was telling me, hey, Hispanics have a high percentage of diabetes. It's in your genes, it's just part of who you are.
It was about 4.5 years ago. My mother actually gave me a book. She had seen it on Huffington Post, and it was the China study. As I read that book, all of this light bulb just went off in my head, and it was just like all these puzzle pieces came together in my mind. And it fundamentally changed the way I think about and the way I practice medicine. We have this acute care model in healthcare today, and it was designed 100 years ago to treat communicable diseases and injury. And we're still trying to treat chronic disease now with that same acute care model, but it doesn't work. We're trying to treat diabetes and heart disease the way we treat strep throat, with pills, but it doesn't work.
The most important thing for people to remember is that health is not a matter of chance. And it's not a matter of your destiny being written on your genes and it's absolutely immutable. There is so much that you can do to stay healthy or to turn your health around if it's been compromised.
I've been doing work in this field for 40 years, and part of the reason that I spend so much time doing research is that the whole point of research is to find out what's real and what isn't, what's true and what isn't. And everything that we've done was thought impossible when we first started doing it. And so when we show in well-controlled scientific studies with state-of-the-art scientific measures and the leading scientists in the field that we work with, and we show that things that were thought impossible actually may not be, may be very possible, it really empowers, at this point, millions of people with new hope and new choices. And awareness is always the first step in healing, which is why this video is so important, because we can really educate people and let them know that these simple changes can have powerful benefits.
My life was out of control, and I was not being able to participate in things that I wanted to do anymore. My story starts a long time ago with a lot of issues with overeating, and I was in my 49th year, and it occurred to me I wasn't going to see 50. It was a lot of sitting on the couch, watching a lot of television and eating. And everyone didn't always see the eating because I did that after they left for school or before, in the car. There was a lot of secretive eating going on. So I think there was always this, she must have a metabolic disorder because how could she be that heavy? And I knew, I knew what was happening. I knew about all the things that they didn't know about. And finally, at 380 pounds and diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and hypertension on medication, I decided to make a commitment to a completely different lifestyle of eating.
I think a lot of people understand fruits and vegetables are good for you, but they don't know how good the good stuff is, and they have no idea how bad the bad stuff is.
It's sad, but I think I can say this honestly, probably 95% of America has no idea how to eat.
In the old days, we liked to listen to Mama. And Mama told us, eat your vegetables, okay? And the truth is, animal products were a little more expensive, so there was less of them. The servings were smaller. Life has changed now. We're now listening to mamas that have not heard mamas talk about common sense nutrition for a number of generations. We're now listening to advertisers who are telling us, this is what you need to feel happy.
Nutritious, delicious. Above all else, beef. It's what's for dinner. Got milk? Ah, the power of cheese.
Eggs. Incredible energy for body and mind.
There's an entire industry that has an economic incentive to sell people processed foods, restaurant foods, foods that contain a lot of animal products. And then on the other hand, you also have people that are addicted to those products. We know that salt and fat and sugar are highly addictive. And so because of these addictions and their preferences, they would prefer to ignore the science than to change the way that they eat.
You'll fall in love with after just one taste.
They're chemists that spend their whole lives, working on the bliss point. But now the industry uses that natural, healthy urge against us, right? The ripest peach in the world is not as sweet as Fruit Loops, right?
For example, an apple that's not ripe has maybe 9 calories in a bite. It tastes sour and doesn't taste very good. An apple that's just a little bit riper that has 1 more calorie in it, that is now pleasant. And so the difference between 9 calories and 10 calories in your mouth, a single calorie is the difference between you being completely unmotivated to eat that apple and being motivated. If you think about putting that same piece of apple in your mouth, except it came from a chocolate apple, so now that's 100 calories. So 9 calories is lousy, 10 calories is good. What do we think 100 calories is going to do? It's going to flood the dopamine pathway, and it's going to result in an addictive-like pleasure response that's going to be very hard to talk people out of.
I was a fast food junkie. My body was telling me, you need that sugar, you need that fat, you need that salt. And so I was going through the drive-thru all the time. In 2002, the doctors advised me that I was diabetic and they wanted to put me on medications right away. And I was kind of fighting with the doctor, saying, hey, let me try to work out more. Can I exercise more? Maybe I'll try to eat better. So for a couple years, I was fighting them and trying to stay away from all the medications. But in 2004, my levels were just still out of control, and ultimately I started taking medications. The next thing you know, hey, the dosage goes up, right? Your sugars are still going in the wrong direction, so we're going to up the dosage. Now we have this predicament where we need to give you a second medication to try and force your pancreas to secrete more insulin to help you with your diabetes. Along the way, it was, oh, your cholesterol's a little high now. Let me give you yet another medication to help you with your cholesterol situation. Oh, by the way, your blood pressure's a little out of control. Let's give you yet another medication. Ultimately got to the point, my sugars were still out of control. and I had to begin to take insulin shots twice a day. So in 2011, at the age of 43, I was injecting myself twice a day with insulin. I was poking myself, checking to see how my sugar levels were doing throughout the day, and I'm taking these 4 oral medications as well. And I'm sitting here going, I can't believe that I'm heading down this path. Look at these shots. Look at all these pills that I'm taking every single day. And I wasn't feeling good, right? I mean, all these medications and the side effects. So I was basically beginning to kind of accept the fact that, hey, this is just my destiny. This is where I've seen my family all go through it, and here now, my turn was knocking at the door. I even asked my doctor, I said, when I began to take my insulin shots, I said, hey doc, will I ever get off this insulin? And he flat out told me, no, you're gonna be on insulin the rest of your life.
When we are used to eating a certain way, we resist change. So if I, as a doctor, say, you got to change everything you're eating, what you've been eating hurts you, it's understandable that a person would be resistant, and that's good. So I don't think of resistance and questions as bad. I think of it as the person saying, here are the doors that I need you to open for me.
I had a really wonderful childhood. I grew up in the country on about 3 acres, and I have 2 wonderful parents who are very loving and nurturing, and spent a lot of time actually outdoors and playing and in the barn with, animals, and it was a really wonderful childhood. I grew up as Seventh-day Adventists and vegetarians. I very rarely ate meat. A lot of cheese and eggs to replace meat. Processed foods too, cereals and those types of food I ate growing up. So I started having some health issues shortly after I got married. It actually started out with my thyroid. I was working night shift as a nurse in the labor and delivery unit and started having some fatigue, and I actually did fine after I got on the medication and really didn't have any health issues outside of that until later on. Things started changing when I actually got pregnant with our first child. About the 27-week mark, they do a glucose tolerance test. And I failed it quite significantly to the point where they said, you are gestational diabetic and you're going to have to go see an endocrinologist and do some food counseling. But don't worry, it'll go away. You'll just have to be careful. But if you exercise and keep yourself healthy, you'll be just fine. Well, the opposite kind of happened for me. I actually had horrible muscle weakness. And so our daughter would be hungry and I would be struggling to open up the baby food jars. And then I started having intermittent blurred vision. And so I went actually to the eye doctor, and she said, well, you could have, diabetes. It could have come back. The one night that was just the clincher was our daughter. Sometimes she'd be fussy in the evenings, and my husband would say, well, you know what I do on the nights you work? I just drive through the coffee shop and I get this frozen coffee and I take our daughter out on a little drive, and she's quiet and sleeps. And so we shared one together and came back home, and I was a mess. I couldn't sleep. I was having hot flashes. I was profusely sweaty and shaky. And about, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, when I was still up feeling nauseated and sick, I got out my blood sugar meter, and it was between 350 and 400. So I ended up seeing the doctor, and he said, you're a type 1. Your body just doesn't produce enough insulin anymore. And so it was very disheartening, and there was a lot of denial. It's really grieving a loss. You're losing just your health, which is a part of what all of us have the right to enjoy in life.
As I've treated patients through the years, I've always tried to describe them, there's this accumulated injury that occurs over time. So people often describe, I was just diagnosed with heart disease or cancer or diabetes. And I always tell them, this is something that is accumulated in your body over decades, and now the symptoms are presenting themselves. You have high blood pressure, you have a heart attack, you have a diagnosis of cancer, but what's been happening in your body kind of subclinically, which means we haven't been able to measure the changes, you've been building up degenerative changes, disease, and injury to tissue that finally reaches a tipping point. And when it crosses the tipping point, it manifests itself in measurable symptoms that we can see in imaging studies and lab tests, things that we can tangibly measure to assess disease. So I always describe them, this is like a credit card debt. You know, you have overspent year after year after year, and you have this debt that now needs to get paid back. And you can't just simply make the monthly payments and expect that it's going to go away. You have to pay back big chunks on a regular basis over time. And then, just like credit cards, we have to learn how to manage it wisely.
Up until this point, it's not being emphasized at all in our healthcare system, and we're not seeing people get healthier. So as much as we do know from the literature, it's to a degree unethical to not be bringing this up to patients. Most patients come into my office thinking that that's it, that this is their destiny, this is what, you know, was written for them, this is in their family history, so they're supposed to be kind of living this way.
In my experience, it's very common for people who have a family history of heart disease to have a family history of eating a very poor, low nutritive quality diet, high in junk food, high in salt, sugar, and fat.
Just because our bodies have a tendency of going in one direction genetically does not necessarily mean that your body needs to go there. The choices that you make today can impact what happens tomorrow, what happens 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now.
Nutrition in pregnancy is very important because we could affect the genetics of our baby. You know, moms who are diabetic could pass on some of those genetics, and you can actually change that and reverse that if they eat foods that would promote a good, healthy lifestyle.
There are genes for diabetes. There are genes for blood pressure. There are genes for heart disease. But those genes aren't dictators. You know, the genes for blue eyes, those are dictators. They give orders, you're going to have blue eyes. The genes for diabetes are like committees. They make suggestions, and you can argue with them. You can say, I don't think I'm going to have diabetes because I'm going to change my diet and my lifestyle, and I'm going to push those genes away. And you can do that. And that is true for a surprising range of conditions.
Being able to work with our families to tell them that what you're doing right now is going to impact not only your life, but your child's life is a very powerful moment when they capture that.
You know, I think the kind of spark for many kids to want to be a doctor when they grow up is watching a parent get sick or even die. But for me, it was watching my grandma get better. She was age 65 when she was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease. She had already had so many bypass operations, basically kind of run out of plumbing at some point. And she's confined in a wheelchair, crushing chest pain, sent home to die. There's nothing more they could do for her. And then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of the early lifestyle medicine pioneers, and was one of his first patients, featured in his biography. She was one of the death's door people that they took into the clinic, and they wheeled her in, and she walked out. And, you know, I'll never forget that. In fact, within a few weeks, she was walking 10 miles a day. It was like this living center. You go there, they teach you how to, you know, cook and put your plant-based diet, exercise. And she went on to live another 31 years to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. And that's what inspired me to go into medicine.
Up until recently, we didn't really think of nutrition as being a very strong force. You know, you eat a little bit less carbs and nothing much happens, or you count calories for a few weeks and you lose a few pounds and then you gain it all back.
High protein, high fat, that sounds like it's supposed to be good. Butter is bad, now butter is good. There's a whole bunch of confusion about nutrition in the popular press.
How many images do I see every day in the television shows, even the cartoons? How many references are there to food? And what percentage of the time is the food bad food? Almost always.
Many people that suffer from chronic diseases that are killing them and causing them suffering, diseases such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and hypertension, things like that, really don't realize that nutrition and targeted nutrition are actually one of the best therapeutic modalities to prevent these kinds of diseases, to treat them, and to even reverse them. Reversing those diseases, which means you don't have to take medications because the disease is gone. It no longer exists.
Foods are the cause of diabetes, of heart disease, of many forms of cancer, of hypertension. And if they're the cause, they can also be the solution. That's been a totally new idea for many people, but it's a very powerful one.
Heart disease is our #1 killer, yet it can be prevented, treated, reversed without drugs, without surgery, with diet and lifestyle change, particularly diet. A whole food, plant-based diet is more powerful than anything we have in medicine when it comes to some of these chronic diseases.
And it wasn't like there was one set of lifestyle changes for reversing heart disease, another one for type 2 diabetes, or for losing weight, or lowering your blood pressure, or your cholesterol. We found that these same lifestyle changes could change all of these.
These lifestyle diseases, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, obesity, and really others as well, have a lot of inflammation in them. One of the benefits of moving to a plant-based diet is there's so many kind of anti-inflammatory things within the plants that help to calm things down. Proteins, especially when they're separated out as in muscle, tend to increase inflammation, whereas plants tend to decrease it. Things like legumes, fruits, vegetables, greens. So decreasing inflammation is a very positive thing when we talk about chronic disease.
The body is a natural self-healing machine, and disease is unnatural, avoidable, and even reversible with superior nutrition.
I've had a number of vegetarians and vegans come to see me as patients, and I was surprised that they're very unhealthy, and in some cases more unhealthy than my patients eating a standard American diet. And so I tried to understand why this occurred, because in my mind I'd always thought, well, vegan, vegetarian, optimal health. But what I've seen in their lives is that they have excluded animal products for a number of reasons, but they include a number of processed carbohydrates, breads, bagels, cereal, cheese for the vegetarian, sugars. And because of that, they are filling their bodies again with things that are depleting and eroding their health. So just because someone tells me now they're vegan or vegetarian, I don't assume they're healthy.
Eat a diet that has a high nutrient per calorie density. Green vegetables are the highest. Colorful vegetables, things like berries, onions, mushrooms, broccoli, carrots, beets.
I will typically use the word whole food, plant-based nutrition as the foundation of our plate, and not just excluding foods and assuming that we're going to be healthy. Because it's really exclusion of, yes, some foods from the standard American diet, but it's the inclusion of important plant-based nutrition that helps us reverse disease.
The foods that do that for you are the ones where their power is very modest, seemingly. The vegetables and the fruits and the whole grains and the beans, those foods have power that you never imagined.
If you start eating out of a box, a bag, or a can, everything is getting processed. And then you suddenly see, my God, there are paragraphs of ingredients. You don't want that. Especially you don't want the mono and diglycerides, you don't want the added oil, and there are usually 4 or 5 or 6 different ways that they're stuffing sugar at you. You don't want that. You want whole food, plant-based nutrition as grown.
I grew up in St. Petersburg, Florida. My family is very close-knit. We had a very good relationship, and I had a very happy childhood. We did have a typical American diet, all the stuff that you think about, you know, hot dogs and chicken wings, and I guess I didn't really think about food all that much. I enjoyed it, but I was not overweight as a kid. It was just kind of, you know, part of the day. I played many varsity sports. I played volleyball and soccer and swimming, and I did 5 years of varsity softball. I really noticed my weight became an issue during medical school because at that time I was just studying and working so much throughout the week that it was really all about convenience. I just went to whatever would be able to keep me awake and give me energy, and usually that was caffeine and sugar and junk food, fast food. During my residency, as this was going on, I started to really feel quite sick. At one point I was diagnosed with pre-hypertension. My blood pressure was high. I developed problems breathing. I was really becoming quite short of breath, even going up one flight of stairs or walking a short bit. I would go into a room and sit down and have to take a minute with a patient, and it was embarrassing because I was out of breath just from walking to the patient's room. I was having really bad sinus problems. I just overall felt like I was very unhealthy and very much older than my age. But I assumed that was just being a resident. You know, it didn't really occur to me to think about it being due to my diet. I'm not very tall. I'm about 5'5", and I was up over 200 pounds. I was quite heavy, and I knew it, and I didn't like the way I felt or looked. But I started thinking more about how I felt, and could this be related to my weight?
The ideal is all the different factors, healthy habits, and I actually motivate the patient to focus on the whole picture rather than just nutrition.
You want to make sure they eat well, drink a lot of water, 7 to 8 hours of sleeping, especially that deep sleep, deep slow-wave sleep.
Another thing that I found important and very helpful is exercise. You know, if you do the exercise on a regular basis, there's a pleasure that comes into your life.
Being physically fit, being physically active, exercise. These are things that we need to do. And they're fun, but it's not going to solve our health and obesity problem. We have to make radical changes on what we put in our mouth.
There's a common feeling that, oh, well, patients won't do that. Well, nothing is further from the truth, because patients will do it, depending upon how the message is articulated.
So I started very seriously. I started every meal, 3 meals a day, making sure that I was eating a nutritarian diet, which consisted mainly of fruits and vegetables, some nuts and seeds, and it worked. And in about 6 months, I lost 120 pounds. And then over the course of maybe another 6 months to maybe a year, I'm not really sure because I stopped obsessing so much, I lost another 100 pounds. So I lost 220 pounds in that period of time. And the diabetes went away within weeks, almost. And the hypertension also went away, and I was able to stop taking Benacar, which is an expensive pharmaceutical. And I started to feel great. My energy level went through the roof. It became much easier. It wasn't such a struggle in the beginning. It was, like anything, a big change in your diet. But all of a sudden it just got easier. And now I'm 5 years into it, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. It saved my life, it saved my marriage. And I have a relationship with my children now where I can actually get out there and do things. I'm not sidelined anymore. I exercise regularly. It's the first time in my life that I know when I go in the closet, things are gonna fit. And I know that next year that same size is gonna fit me as well. And that's a huge burden off of some people think it's a burden to eat what may be considered a strict regimen, which to me it's not. It's a burden to be a compulsive overeater that's addicted to sugar. That's a burden.
I grew up in Texas eating meat 4 or 5 times a day, and I liked it. And again, there's no point in giving up something that you enjoy or that I enjoy unless I get something back that's better. So I began eating a plant-based diet when I was 19 because I found I felt better, I looked better, I had more energy, I could think more clearly. And so when you begin to eat healthier foods, many people find they actually begin to prefer them. And whether or not food tastes good is much more a function of how it's prepared than, what type of food it is. And I've learned a long time ago that the best way to make healthy food taste good is to work with a great chef, even if they're not known for cooking healthily, because great chefs know how to make great food, and then say work within these guidelines, and then it can be delicious and nutritious. You don't have to make those choices.
I would argue that animal products all taste about the same. Whether it's a fish or a chicken or a cow or a pig, it's all muscle, unless you're eating organ meats, but most of what we eat is muscle meat. And then it's, of course, flavored, maybe by something the animal ate, but the flavor is not all that much. So when you move into the plant kingdom and you start to focus on plants, you'll discover a lot more textures and a lot more flavors. Stop to think about it. When you go to the restaurant and they prepare that fish for you or that steak, what are they seasoning with? Well, it's plants, it's herbs. That's where the flavors are.
So they're finding out new stuff that they've never experienced before. So it's kind of a exploration and discovery. They don't feel deprived, and then maybe they'll start feeling better. All of a sudden, the digestion is better, their energy's better, their sleep's better, right? And they start noticing these things, and they get more and more, healthy. And then, nothing tastes as good as healthy feels.
My health journey has really, until I discovered plant-based eating, it really was a roller coaster. And you hear yo-yo dieting, but really it becomes a yo-yo life. I think the hope I didn't see coming was medical professionals that actually started to help me address some of the issues I was dealing with. You hear the negative side of medical professionals and, those who just giving you a pill and sending you out the door. But there are medical professionals out there that really do care, and they want you to be at your best. When I made the change to a whole foods, plant-based diet, I was able to get off all those medications. Very quickly, within 6 months, I went to the doctor and I was like, I'm really starting to feel dizzy. And he's like, well, your blood pressure is really, quite low. And I think we're gonna have to take you off your medication. And my cholesterol was just dropping. And it's like, I don't think you really need that anymore. And I didn't have acid reflux and all these allergy issues. So all those pills went to the wayside. And so there I was, just left with kind of the core chronic, disease of just my diabetes and my thyroid. But even that improved. Medication doses were lowered. I was using 50 to 60 units a day as a type 1, and now, I take around 20 units. And so it drastically changed and just revolutionized my whole life. Like, I thought I was free, but I didn't really understand what freedom was until I changed my lifestyle. You have more energy, you're more vibrant, you're more happy, and when you make these types of changes in your life and you really decide you're gonna do it, it will radically change your life for the better, and you'll never wanna go back.
Now, what are you going to eat?
If I take away all their meat and all their dairy and all their oil, and they look at me, they go, Dr. McDougall, I got nothing to eat. There's nothing for me to eat at all, nothing. And I say, yes, there is. And then I show them the key, which you have to know, or you will fail. I show them the starch.
You're going to eat all these marvelous whole grains for your cereal, bread, and pasta, 101 different types of beans and legumes, and all these marvelous red, yellow, and green leafy vegetables and some fruit.
Those are my 4 groups: fruits, vegetables, grains, and the bean group.
So half of the plate should be fruits and vegetables, then kind of roughly a quarter whole grains preferably, and then a quarter protein, not meat, protein, which, and so beans actually count as both protein and vegetables. They get kind of double duty.
One rule that I teach folks is that if an ingredient label has a bunch of stuff that a 7-year-old couldn't draw a picture of, then it's probably not something that you want to eat.
My palate has changed, the things I appreciate, a fresh roasted beet. Oh. I get really excited about produce. Can you tell?
What are the green leafy vegetables? Bok choy, Swiss chard, kale, collards, collard green, beet greens, mustard green, turnip greens, Napa cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, cilantro, parsley, spinach, and arugula, and asparagus. You got it.
The fact of the matter is, I'm not depriving myself of anything. I mean, I'm having a great time. I'm eating a wide variety of foods. It's even a wider variety than I ate when I wasn't a plant-based eater.
The black bean loaf that I made, that was a huge hit in my family. These were former meat eaters, and now they are happy when they come home to the black bean loaf and some steamed broccoli. I think it's a miracle.
So during my residency, I took an elective with Dr. George Guthrie. I read his book. I started thinking more about what's in my foods and is this actually good for me or not. So I switched over to not just vegan, but a whole foods, plant-based diet. I cut out processed sugars, I cut out, excess fats, and within a few weeks I started noticing that my breathing was improving. My sinuses cleared up, my skin cleared up, and the weight fell off pretty quickly. I lost about 40 pounds in 4 months. As the weight started to fall off, I started to think about adding some exercise in. It feels so good to be able to do that because I could barely walk up a flight of stairs when I was so overweight and so unhealthy. At this point, I'm about 45 pounds down. I'm not done losing weight yet. I definitely have a ways to go still. I would like to, further refine my diet. I think at this point it's pretty good, but there's still some more things I can work on, like, some of the added oils that sneak their way in, I can kind of work on. But it doesn't feel like work. It feels great. It makes you feel like you're improving yourself. It just feels fantastic.
We adopted this lifestyle on December 3rd of 2011. Within days, 3 to 4 days, I start to see my sugars plummet, and I'm seeing my weight drop anywhere between 5 to 7 pounds per week. My psoriasis went away. My heartburn, I've not had heartburn since I adopted this lifestyle. And I'm Mexican, I love spicy food. I eat jalapenos and spices, Indian food. My whole body starts to be improving and starting to heal itself. So not quite 60 days later, I was off all 5 of my medications. My health continues to be normal, my A1C levels, my cholesterol levels, my blood pressures. So here I sit at 47 years old, and I'm healthier than I was even 20 years ago. When my wife and I adopted a whole foods plant-based lifestyle, we basically changed the trajectory of my family's future.
The fact is that 40% of children born after the year 2000 will develop type 2 diabetes. One of the things that the American College of Lifestyle Medicine is doing, and I'm so proud of the organization for doing this, is that we are developing a patient bill of rights for type 2 diabetes. And essentially what this means is that we know that type 2 diabetes can be prevented and treated and even reversed through lifestyle medicine. And so when a patient comes into the hospital, they have that conversation with their provider about what should I do, doctor, for my type 2 diabetes. Lifestyle medicine isn't being discussed in the same way that bariatric surgery is being discussed, not in the same way that, what medication you might want to take. In fact, last time I checked, there are over 46 medications to treat type 2 diabetes. None of those medications actually reverse type 2 diabetes, but we know that through lifestyle, you can actually reverse type 2 diabetes. So imagine the patient consenting with their physician that this is the way we want to treat our disease, and they're not even given that option of lifestyle medicine to use as a modality to treat their disease. So that is why the American College of Lifestyle Medicine is putting forth this patient bill of right on type 2 diabetes. And it's not just the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, other organizations are also joining us in this, but we think it's very important that patients understand all the things they can do to help treat and prevent their type 2 diabetes, and not just medications alone.
We have a lot more control over our health and our well-being than we had once thought. Not to blame, but to empower. If we're just a victim of bad genes or bad luck or bad whatever, what can you do? But to the degree we realize that these simple choices that we make in our lives each day can make such a profound difference in all aspects of our lives, then that understanding can empower us to make choices that can really make a difference, both in our own lives, the lives of the people that we care about, and in a larger context in our planet as well.
I'd never imagined this much of a dramatic change in a year, and I never imagined feeling this good, this quick. I want to feel
This is gonna make me cry.
It is about the weight. I'd love to get the weight off. I know that I need to get it off for my joints, but I'm 36 years old. I just want to be healthy. I want to enjoy my kids, enjoy my grandkids. I cannot imagine missing one thing.
So what emotions come to you when you sit and you watch that doc?
I don't even recognize that person. It's just amazing that we can get to that point in life and not even see yourself that way. And it's not just the physical changes, it's mental changes. It's everything about my life is different. And I was just fueling myself with the wrong foods and killing myself from the inside. So I no longer have gallbladder issues. My hands don't swell up anymore to where I can't put my jewelry on. My skin looks better than it's ever looked. I run 5 miles a day, 5 to 6 days a week. So I am now averaging 30 to 32 miles a week with no joint pain. No medication. This is strictly the food that I'm putting in my body. I have officially lost 102 pounds since going plant-based. So when I reflect back to what was such a fear of mine, which was not being around for my kids, I don't have that fear anymore. Not at all. I don't fear that at all. The only thing I fear is that they can't keep up with me.
I saw 5 experts in this city. As the borough president, access to the best health care and advisors this city has to offer. And they all told me that there was nothing you can do. It's in your DNA. Your mother was diabetic, your family's diabetic. And after the reversal, I learned it wasn't my DNA, it was my dinner. It wasn't where I was born, it was my breakfast, and it wasn't my lineage, it was my lunch.
Wow, maybe it's normal to actually feel great, right? Maybe it's normal to have all this energy. And really, maybe it's normal not to get sick all the time and not to have these allergies and these joint aches.
Be able to maximize your life. It's not a matter of years, it's a quality of life.
The most important decision anyone makes every day is what they elect to put in their mouths.
The only regret I have is I wish I would have done this sooner. I wish I would have raised my children this way. I wish I would have eaten this way my whole life.
We're starting to learn the power of lifestyle medicine, and this is life-changing, not only for our patients, but also for ourselves.
I love my food. I'm ridiculous. I love produce departments. I love farmers markets.
You will lose weight. You will lose your high blood pressure. You will lose your diabetes. You will feel better. You'll lose your risk for stroke. So there are side effects.
I'm now in control of my destiny and my future, not diabetes and not cholesterol and not high blood pressure.
I have reversed disease. The damage that hypertension does to your heart and type 2 diabetes, it was reversed.
When you do the right thing, you start to heal from the inside. You're made whole.
Just a reminder, and the slide will come up in just a moment, of contact information and the meeting this Thursday that's open to everyone. No registration, just come 6:30. It'll be here at the church in the fireside room. Thank you so much for coming, and let's just give Dr. Guthrie another round of applause. Thank you so much for coming, and we will have another conversation about another event. Thank you and good evening. Website? If you Google PlantWise, you will find it. PlantWise documentary.
That's the way it works. Dr. Kamazi was the cardiologist.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, I don't need it. Yeah.
Well.